Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info, and welcome to Behind the Wall here for the post-race show after the race in Las Vegas. We're unofficially pending the results of post-race inspection. William Byron has now won his first race of the season, and Joey Logano has his third career last place finish, his first since 2018. In fact, all three races to start this season have had drivers that have most recently finished last in 2018, joining Ty Dillon at Daytona and AJ Allmendinger last week during our coverage at Fontana. Kind of a very calm and relaxing race for most of it here. Very low attrition. Cody Ware seemed to have a pretty good hold on last place through most of the event here. Handling was a serious issue for a number of teams out there, despite the fact that unlike Fontana, we had practice and qualifying for teams to figure things out. Only 3 teams sent to the back of the field before the start, but pretty much every one of them had some kind of a problem one way or another in the opening laps, and were caught up in losing laps very quickly with the very infrequent cautions that we had at the very beginning of it, during which William Byron in particular was putting on an absolute clinic, dominating much of this event. His teammate Kyle Larson made his way towards the front, learning the lessons that they learned from Fontana last week after an electrical issue put them 17 laps down. They came back out and gained 2 of those laps back before the finish with a very fast car, with crew chief Cliff Daniels telling them to just drive it hard, even though they had absolutely no shot of winning the Fontana race. That definitely paid dividends and almost pulled off the victory here to bounce back from the disappointment out here in California. But regardless, a good start to the season for him, at least in these first couple of downforce tracks to begin the year. But a very interesting kind of situation with this one here. Vegas, again, it's kind of a track where covering the last place finisher deal, we usually have somebody that falls out of the race in about the second half of it there. You've had a number of different drivers that completed more than 100 laps, finishing last in this race, and which has invariably caught up a number of drivers who were actually top caliber teams. It's usually very rare, actually, that we get kind of a smaller team or a more struggling organization back there. The number 51 hadn't finished last year. Live Fast Motorsports hadn't finished last year, and that streak really continues through this week's affair here. So kind of unusual, or I guess quite the opposite, quite usual in this sense to actually see Joey Logano, the defending series champion, as well as most recent winner at Las Vegas last September, or October rather, coming out and finishing in last place after an incident off of turn 4. Got swept up into the outside wall, had a toe link issue. We have seen the Penske team be able to repair toe links very quickly. I think they were one of the first, besides Denny Hamlin at Gateway last year, to really kind of figure that out. Logano at Atlanta, I believe, last July, was able to get back out there. And even though the crash clock has since been extended to allow for more time for an issue with the toe link, the radio traffic seemed to indicate that the damage was much more severe than they could actually fix on pit road. And so as a result, he ended up going behind the wall, took last place from Ware about 4 laps later. And so just 4 laps short of Kurt Busch's record of 187 laps complete. The 183 laps completed by Logano in today's race is now the second most of any Cup Series last place finisher at Las Vegas. Too bad also for the paint scheme, though. It was a nice paint scheme he had, very reminiscent of Steve Park's old Pennzoil car. Lastbro said it even looked more to him like Johnny Benson's Pennzoil car with Bahari Racing as well. But regardless, unfortunately, a finish at the back of the field here in the sponsors race, as Joey very much brought up in his interview there. And the pole sitter, yep, Ryan Idias, you're very right to point it out as well. So, it's going to be kind of one of those situations with these teams here as well. So we'll see what happens coming up here. Fairly open and shut in terms of most discussion here of the race. We did have a bit of an incident on the back straightaway that collected a number of drivers and did shuffle the order quite a bit there. More so, I'd say, than the pit stops that preceded it. The unofficial results here showing Byron is your winner over Kyle Larson by 0.6 of a second. Alex Bowman making it a Hendrick 1-2-3 finish after Chase Elliott's injury in a snowboarding accident this past week. Certainly hoping for a quick recovery for him. But this time around, He is going to be out of the car, at least for the foreseeable future. Josh Berry, who has won the most recent 2 fall races at Vegas, was his relief driver today. He did bounce off the wall in the early laps, ended up ultimately finishing back in the 29th spot, 2 laps down, so a bit further back in the order for the Hendrick effort there, so they couldn't quite get all 4 of them up there. Joe Gibbs Racing having a fine showing here from their teams. Certainly Denny Hamlin and especially Christopher Bell seemed like they were about the best of the rest outside of the Chevy teams, although we did once again see the Trackhouse efforts up there of the Chevy program there, with both Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez being a factor in this finish, at least in the top 10 there. So some good showings of other drivers that were just on the outside looking in, but getting a decent show as well, and something they could build on here at the same time. Bubba Wallace with a fine showing. He was in the top 10 for most of this race, in spite of the fact from the radio transmissions, it sounded like he wasn't too happy with his car, but a 4th place finish, coming back from the frustration that he had here last fall, where he won stage 1 and then, of course, was involved in that incident with Kyle Larson off of turn 4, comes back to the very same track and has a great showing there. So good job for him and the 2311 team. I think that team in particular has a lot to be very happy about from this one, both with Bubba's finish and the great recovery by his teammate, Tyler Reddick, starting at the back of the field after an engine change, works his way up into the top 20 in, 11 laps, and very much was looking to have a good finish here. Unfortunately, in the final shuffle across the finish line shows him 15th in the running order, but he had at least a top 10 car, it seemed, in the closing stages of this. And certainly given the frustrations he had at both Daytona and Fontana with a couple very difficult runs there, the restart wreck at Fontana and the turn 4 wreck at Daytona, I think that's something that you definitely look very positively on there as well. Bubba Wallace, Christopher Bell, again, mentioning a top Joe Gibbs effort there in the 5th spot. 6th goes Austin Cindric. 7th for Martin Truex Jr. Not exactly the best decision to take the inside line with no fresh tires when William Byron and the best car out there in the field gets right side tires. It seemed like the result was kind of foregone at that point there, especially with how much momentum Byron was able to build up on the outside lane through most of this race. And even though we didn't really have that many restarts, Truex did a valiant job trying to stay up there, but it seemed like the story was already written at that point. I don't exactly know why they picked the inside line. I don't know if that was covered in the post-race. I were kind of setting this up here in the meantime during all of that. I mean, it's easy to judge that in the hindsight, but we'll see how things look for the Clash winner in the coming weeks. 7th place finish for him. Justin Haley, a great job by him. It seemed like he was staying on the lead lap, not one of the top contenders. He was around about the 15th, 16th spot there, it seemed like in the closing laps. But a great recovery there, getting an 8th place finish there for the Daytona winner from a couple years ago. Good to see, a fine showing there. I'm still kind of surprised that it seems like Kaulig Racing doesn't produce a whole lot of merch. It seemed like the Dude Bros of that team there would probably be very big in getting that brand out there. I was encouraged to see a little bit more of that at Fontana last week. They started making hats for Allmendinger and Haley and those guys out there. So that was certainly interesting to see. Hopefully runs like this will get even more attention. Unfortunately, his teammate Allmendinger involved in that wreck on the back straightaway, so he has back-to-back accidents on the back straightaway of races here to start the season. Hopefully he can kind of turn around that slide at Phoenix next week. Speaking of Phoenix, we have Kevin Harvick in the 9th spot, looking to continue his top 10 streak coming up here next week. And then, of course, if there's a path to the championship, it'll certainly be eye-opening to see how well he can perform at this track if he does so happen to win races and make the playoffs and perhaps even the championship 4. But again, not really one of the strongest cars out there, but also not finishing at the back of the field like he had in the Rheem car last year. I believe he was last at Kansas, if I remember correctly, with the Rheem paint scheme, finishing back there. And then Daniel Suarez rounding out the top 10 just ahead of Denny Hamlin. Fine run for Suarez, as was mentioned by one of you guys here in the chat. Very good start for Trackhouse and Suarez in particular here, even actually finishing ahead of his teammate Ross Chastain after Chastain got second to Logano in this race last fall, coming back to finish in the 12th spot after he was kind of shaken out there at the end. So that's kind of where the lineup is. Kyle Busch, I expected to be very strong in this race, especially running all 3 series. I was thinking that it wasn't going to be too much of a surprise if he swept all 3. He did win the truck race in pretty typical dominant fashion, but had a serious issue with the handling of his car in Saturday, and it sounds like to an extent today that kept him out of contention. I know there was a lot made about the contact he made off of turn 2 in the early stages of the race, but still finishing in the 14th spot here. A bit disappointing, I'm sure, for him after the victory last week in Fontana. I think that maybe that's going to temper people's expectations a little bit after it seemed like he had just probably the best possible start of anybody, with a great run in the Clash, winning Fontana, and in between leading at lap 200 at Daytona, even with the crash that happened there. But, again, Phoenix could be just as well a place he turns things around, or Atlanta, or, any of these others coming up here just as well. Tyler Reddick, mentioning him in the 15th spot there. Almirola brought out the final caution of the day, finishes in the 16th spot. Keselowski, Allmendinger, and Eric Jones with the last cars on the lead lap. Jones in 19th. LaJoie finishing in 20th. Good to see him get some attention on the broadcast there. Much has been made about his streak of good, solid runs here, at least these first few races this year, which is certainly helpful for the Spire effort, given the fact that their 77 team seems to be facing so many struggles here through a lot of these. Once again, Ty Dillon, a little bit of a factor in your last place battle here, finishing in the 34th spot, although just 6 laps down to the race winner there. Good to see BJ McLeod climb up from last place in this one here. He really wasn't in 36 for too long in this one. They did re-wrap the car after we saw them pull off the wrap for the America's Gold paint scheme that he had over at Fontana there. Rewrapped it in the Circle B diecast scheme. If you haven't checked out my interview with BJ, I actually just posted that earlier this morning, and it's still the top article there over at lastcard.info. I had a great conversation with him, and I decided to kind of tie that into kind of a pre-race thing for today's race, and it gives a little bit of insight as to what happened, both at the Clash and at Daytona, including the Fontana race that we covered last week there, but finishing back in the 32nd spot for him today. Not his season best. Fontana was his season best so far when he was kind of working his way back onto the lead lap. It was very clear in pointing out that he was running on the lead lap for most of that race before an issue on pit road. So it looks like there's something that they're going to be kind of working on the weeks coming up ahead here. Back in the field here, a number of drivers, it's still kind of surprising to see him back here. Chase Briscoe, I'm not sure what's going on over at Stewart-Haas Racing there. Very kind of concerned about the 14 team. We saw a bit of this last year even after he won his first race at Phoenix, which is, of course, the next venue we got coming up here next week. It seemed like he was really kind of having trouble kind of getting his feet back under him at some of these other venues, and it looks like we're seeing a continuation of that. We're not really seeing Stewart-Haas be that dominant in the first part of this year anyway. Penske has really kind of taken the mantle of being the top Ford team out there. But still, hopefully they can turn things around. Maybe Phoenix is a good place for that opportunity, especially if, as mentioned, if Kevin Harvick's able to continue his top 10 streak over at Phoenix next weekend. But at the back of the field there, Todd Gilliland running the same Redebush sponsorship that he had at Vegas last year when we rescued the pit road banner there on pit road. I'm not sure if they ran the same banner or not. It looks like they changed the logo on the car, but it would be cool to find out. I haven't seen any pictures of it yet, but if any of you guys see anything like that, I'd be interested to see that. J.J. Yaley further back in the pack, 33rd place on the same lap as Ty Dillon, just finishing ahead of him on the same lap, 1 lap behind B.J. McLeod, and then Cody Ware back in 35th. Really had to feel for Cody during a lot of this, having a situation where, again, the car was just really having trouble with handling. I'm not sure if they had many notes that they could pass on from how they ran at Fontana, because it seemed like in that race as well, they were kind of behind the pack by open track before last place kind of changed hands with one of the other programs out there with A.J. Allmendinger. But that was kind of the story at the back of the field there too. We'll talk about the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series races as well, and we'll do some trivia here tonight. I also got a couple things for show and tell to kind of tie in with last week's show at the same time. And of course, we'll cover your guys' questions here at the same time. Thank you, first of all, Beast of Metal. Thank you for your super chat here. I see Byron took some fashion tips from Josh Allen this week. Am I the only one who thinks of Dark Helmet when seeing those oversized hats? Yeah, I got to say, that's kind of a fun trend. Actually, it kind of reminds me of a little bit of work on the Derek Cope book. There were a lot of pictures that turned up, I believe, from our good friend Charlie Birch, that were shots of Derek Cope in Victory Lane when he won the 1990 Daytona 500. And they wore those oversized hats. I believe it was Unical 76 sponsoring those at the time. So it's kind of cool to see that trend come back. We did see it, yes, a lot in, Thursday Night Football this last year. And now we got those on pit road for these cup races. Kind of fun in particular in this sport because, of course, the hat dance is such a central part of a lot of, Victory Lane photography and the way these races are covered. It seemed like it was only a natural transition. They start doing that. I guess the real challenge is, did they have multiple hats or was it just the one for the Raptors sponsorship? Because if they did multiple ones, that seems like the logistics of that are going to get really challenging from one to the next. Not that it wouldn't be fun to see him try, for sure. But yes, thank you for the super chat there too. Bowser Jr., thank you for your super chat there as well. Mike Joy is self-aware about commercials. Love it. Yeah, Mike Joy has always been extremely down to earth, and he's not. He doesn't BS a lot of the stuff that goes on there. And I think if there's something that seems a bit strange to him, he may not say it outright, but you'll know it's something that's kind of bothering him. I sense the same thing from when he talked about like the cars catching on fire back over at the Busch Clash and, remarking on almost like waiting to see if somebody else is going to have the problem and, kind of addressing that, okay, yeah, this is an issue and this is absurd, but, he doesn't have to out and out say it. Being the professional that he is, I think he's found a way to really be able to convey that. And I don't recall what he was saying about commercials, but I got to rewatch the clip there in particular. But thank you for the heads up. And thank you for the other super chat there as well, Bowser Jr. Also quite the contrast between Vegas and St. Pete. Yes, I didn't watch that one live, but I've seen a lot of the highlights online. It sounded like it was absolutely a barn burner down there in Florida. But congratulations to, I guess I don't know if I'll do spoilers on here if anybody's already seen it or not, but it sounded like it was quite the show down there. I know that I believe William Saki on our website there does some IndyCar last place coverage, so we'll get some more bonus content for you guys on that in the near future, and then we'll certainly go from there. But it sounded like it was quite the show there, and I know that the challenges, I heard a lot of comments from that were saying like, oh, it's frustrating that they got to wait a month till the next race, and I certainly can sympathize on that. I know that in NASCAR it's great that we have multiple races in a row in this West Coast swing right after Daytona. I couldn't imagine like having to wait a month after like the 500 for a next race, although there used to be more gaps in the schedule at one point, but things are a bit different nowadays here. So maybe IndyCar will get to that point, but we'll find out I guess along the way there too. Now I want oversized LASCAR hat. Actually, yeah, that'd be pretty rad. You get like a big white one there. It's probably look like a big umbrella at that point there. But that would be kind of fun. Maybe we'll have to figure something out like that with the LASCAR champion or something like that. Maybe the certificates I think are still going to be. We're still going to keep that going this year. But we'll find out. November is going to be quite a ways away. We got quite a season of storylines to build on, and I think we had another good step towards that today. Not the most competitive race, but again, some interesting last place, intrigue here at the same time. So thank you very much for following up with the last place coverage here, and I appreciate the comments that we get on the channel and the videos and everything else. We got plenty more content coming up for you guys. I was just doing an update to the Patreon last night to kind of inform them of some of the other things that I'm working on here. Including updates on the Derek Cope book. I guess I could fill you guys in on some of that too here now that that's been posted in the Patreon there. They get their advanced access there. But we got a lot of pictures of Bob Schacht from our good friend Brian Holman over at the BRH Racing Archives. Always provides some great content. After that statistic at Daytona this year, where Ty Dillon finished last in both his duel and the 500, I decided it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to do a short video on him as well. And I know I mentioned him a little bit in the Rise of the Field fillers, because he came up there as one of the teams that was kind of filling out the field, even in the Hooters 500 that year. In fact, his car, the number 57 entry, is actually on the cover image for episode 1 of that series. That is a video I just actually recorded last night. The video is going to be a lot shorter. This is going to be about 9 minutes long. Hopefully that means it's going to come together pretty quickly. I'm kind of filling that in at the same time that I'm doing the script or finishing the graphics for the next episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. So hopefully I'll get both those done around the same time. I'd like to get Field Fillers done first because that series is now, it's been more than a year now since the Hermie Sadler one. So we'll get that up there, and that's going to be coming up here on the channel here very soon. And then this one on Shacked, I think, is probably going to come together quicker than the Trevor Boys one. The Trevor Boys one, I still need to actually write the script. I have the material together. I have tons of pictures from Brian on that one. I just haven't had the time to write it with the work we had in February, as well as the coverage in Fontana. But now things are kind of loosening up a bit. I've been playing a lot of catch up here this past week, and I think that's going to help out quite a bit. So we're going to do that and get those videos out. And I think in these next couple months, because the next trackside coverage I'm going to do is not going to be till Sears Point in June. So I'm hopeful that in this time we're going to get some videos on this channel again. We'll get some more updates on the book, hopefully get closer to setting a release date here. It's going to be very exciting, so definitely keep staying tuned both to this channel as well as to my Twitter feed at Last Car on Brock. We're going to have a lot of stuff coming up here, and I'm very excited to bring it to you guys here this year. Let's see, another thing. I also want to make sure, before I forget, big thank you to Seth Eggert over at kickingthetires.net for his excellent interview of both myself and NASCAR Man. If you haven't checked out the article, definitely check out Seth's page there. Again, kickingthetires.net. I can post the link there as well. I believe I retweeted it on my account here, and I also posted it in the Patreon there. He did a great interview with both of us, kind of talking about our different approaches to videos. I think this is particularly helpful because, again, I know there are times that I get, people ask me about a video that NASCAR Man wrote and said that they really enjoyed it. And again, the thing I got to make very clear is again, he has a very different style than what I do. I think again, he has a different awareness of different aspects of motorsports than I do. But I think what's great is that we work off each other very well. And I think that really works to his content. In fact, one of the other scripts, he actually sent me another script that I recorded just last night. And that's going to be coming up later this month. Again, I don't want to disclose too much information on that, but I think it's going to be one you're really going to be very interested in here. It's going to deal more with open wheel racing. I'll say that much, and I think I'll just leave it there. But I think it's going to be very good. So that'll be something that if you're in the patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, if you're in the $1 and up levels, you'll have advanced access to that. As for Rise of the Field Fillers and the Bob Shacked video and so forth, if you're the $5 and up levels, you'll have advanced access to those. So that'll be coming up here very shortly. But yeah, big thanks again to Seth there on the interview. You asked some very good questions. We had a good time on that, and I think that'll be something that really complement our work pretty well at the same time there. Let's see. A couple other driver interviews I'm working on here. I have one that I've set up next week that's going to be for another video later on. I have another interview I did on Friday that I don't want to give too much. I mean, I hate to keep saying I don't want to give a lot of details on it, but actually this one here, it might turn into something else as a feature on the site. I need to do a little bit more digging on that. So it's been a busy couple of weeks here since we got, actually 1 week really since we got back from Fontana, but it's a good kind of busy. So I think it's going to be good for you guys here in the meantime and kind of get all that checked out. So that'll be one thing to talk about. So let's see here. Let me kind of get into the Xfinity and the Truck Series races. Mentioning again with Joey Logano in the last place finish here, I did touch on this. He is the first driver. It's the first time he's finished last since 2018. Talked about that with Allmendinger and Ty Dillon. The most recent time he finished last was when we covered Watkins Glen in 2018. Before that was his first ever last place run in 2009 in the Daytona 500. And those are only 3 times that he's finished last in a Cup Series points-paying race. So excluding the Clash, excluding the duels or the All-Star race there. So a very rare situation for sure. And much like the Watkins Glen one, the crash clock certainly played a factor in there. At Watkins Glen, he went behind the wall when they didn't know the clock had started and basically voluntarily took themselves out of the race when all they needed was a new radiator. In this case here, they were just, again, trying to repair the car and ended up being in a situation that just completely took them out of it there. And they weren't able to fix it as quickly as they were at Atlanta. So, yeah, very rare to have Joey finish in last place. Certainly with the start of his career, being during that period when you had start and park drivers in 2009, 2010. I think that's part of the reason why. But it still seems like he doesn't get in the bottom five that often, especially this past year coming off his championship season. But pending post-race inspection, that's going to be kind of the feature on the website there and feature for the article here later tonight. So look forward to that. Going back to the Xfinity Series race, congratulations to Austin Hill on a determined victory there. Had to absolutely track down race leader Chandler Smith in the final laps of that one. You got to feel for Chandler Smith. I'd spoken with his father last week at Fontana, and I'm sure he was absolutely on the edge of his seat there, seeing if he could pull off the victory there. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. Seemed like handling issues once again were a big factor in Saturday's race. Chandler getting past just the final couple of laps there. Austin Hill and Justin Allgaier make their way by. But Smith, certainly has nothing to really hang his head about there. I think he's off to a very good start and is going to be another driver to watch along with John Hunter Nemechek and Cole Custer and a couple people that are more favored for the championship. The colleague effort is just as strong as ever as it was with AJ Allmendinger and getting his career going. So it's very exciting to see there too. So I think that'll be good. Kyle Busch in fourth and Josh Berry coming back from a spin in the fifth position there. Looking further back, John Hunter Nemechek still getting his sixth place finish. I think still off to a fantastic start this year. Sam Mayer still looking for his first win in seventh. Riley Herbst, same story in eighth. Sheldon Creed in ninth. And Daniel Hemrick rounding out the top 10. Your last place finisher, much like today's race in the Cup Series, went about the distance. We had basically a three-way battle, which between Joey Gase, Parker Retzlaff, and Garrett Smithley, who each incurred different mechanical issues. For Parker Retzlaff, something came loose in the rear of his number 31 entry for Jordan Anderson Racing. Wasn't sure if the rear end came unhooked, or if it was just a flat tire, or if it was something that hit the underneath of the car. The team couldn't find what the issue was despite multiple pit stops, but that dropped him multiple laps down. For Garrett Smithley, it was an issue with the power steering. At one point, it looks like the fluid came out of the car and created a lot of smoke. They had to refill the reservoir, which had broken off its bolts, and get him back out there. And then Joey Gase had an actual fuel pump line fail. And they had problems with that stemming from it the whole day. He spent more time behind the wall than either of them, and that ended up being the factor. He was about 20 laps down for the rest of the race. Ended up pulling behind the wall, I believe, with about 15 to go when he couldn't gain any more spots, and he ended up being the only retiree from the race. Vegas is a track that Joey Gase seems to have all kinds of problems at. I'm not exactly sure why. Joey, of course, the last over was one of our most famous features on the website when he finished last at both the Xfinity and the Cup race, and it was called the last over because in the Cup race, they were looking for a crew member that had the computer that wasn't at the track, and they're wondering if he was back at the hotel, and there was a long protracted drama that we were tracking on the Twitter feed at the time that I'm sure was the reason I ended up getting blocked by their account on Twitter. But it was interesting. I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool to chronicle it and showing that, look, they weren't just going to park that car and just say, hey, screw it. They're going to make sure they get the guy out there and try to look at the car and fix it and get him back out there. Unfortunately, by the time they did all that, they couldn't get back out there, and so they had to finish last in that event. So again, I think that's one of those things that kind of happen in the garage area you probably wouldn't be aware of, unless you're really looking for it. And that kind of happens from any of these other teams. I think that's kind of the interesting way to chronicle that from one race to the next year. But Joey Gase, he had that incident. He had the big wreck that he had for Rick Ware when a wheel broke off, going into the first corner there, had a very hard hit there for that effort. And then, of course, he has this situation here with the number 35 at the own Emmerling Gase team. He was very frustrated over the radio, as understandably he would be, just saying he's got to find some luck. And it's too bad because Jordan Teague's Designs did a great job with that paint scheme on the 35. It was cool to see that in person at Fontana. Unfortunately, it didn't bring him enough luck here this week, but finishing back in last place here for the Xfinity race. So kind of an interesting one. I think in terms of the last place battles, we had some good ones here, certainly in Xfinity and Cup. Trucks was a very different story. We'll get into that here very shortly. Before we do, I do want to give a shout out to a couple of other drivers that had some good runs. Parker Kligerman, I was very much excited about running at Vegas. Got spun out of a top 5 at the very beginning of the race there from John Hunter Nemechek. Had to claw his way back into the pack and worked his way all the way to 11th at the finish. So great job by him. I think between that and the Fontana run where he worked his way towards the top 10 was a good showing there as well. So we'll see if he can carry that into Phoenix. The other one you have to certainly talk about is Kyle Weatherman, who took over for David Starr in that unsponsored American flag paint scheme for Our Motorsports. Our seemed to indicate that they were interested in having him run more races for him. It was just by way of memes on Twitter, but hopefully that's a sign of something positive there because, I mean, Kyle is one of the best talents in the Xfinity series that just can't lock down a full-time ride. We saw it with him and when he was teamed with Bailey Curry over at Mike Harmon Racing. We saw it again with Jesse Iwuji's team last year, and we're seeing it now in just the, it's okay, just in one start really with Our Motorsports. But the consistent factor has been him. And if he can kind of get a full-time ride, get some stability under him, and get some better equipment, and I would say it's been progressively better between these three teams, it wouldn't surprise me to start seeing him kind of break into that top 10 and kind of fight with a lot of those other programs that are just kind of behind whoever the top driver is in Xfinity, and then kind of the JR Motorsports guys, and then everybody else. And there's a lot of unpredictability in that part of the field right now. And every once in a while, one of those guys can maybe get into the top 5 and maybe even be a factor for the win and beat the Gibbs or the Junior Motorsports or the Childress entries that are kind of up there now. And I think it's another sign of just how strong that series is. But that's definitely another guy that, just needs to get a break. And I hope that it works out for him because I think whatever team lands him is going to get a bargain out of him for sure. And again, I feel the same way about Bailey Curry too. I know that, he's had a lot of struggles here, made the move over to JD Motorsports. He's kind of had, some rough runs here to begin the year. But again, I think that, if he can help elevate that program or if he finds another ride, it wouldn't surprise me to see him be more of a factor. Yes, he won the last car championship last season, but it was only from finishing last twice. And he was only a factor when it came down to the next to last race. If that didn't happen, it would have very easily gone to his teammate Brennan Poole, who, his statistics were weighted more heavily because he drove for Mike Harmon when they were having a lot of mechanical issues at the beginning of the 2022 season. So, we'll see how things shake out there. But definitely some positive indicators there from some of the other programs too. So yeah, good closing finish to the end, finish of the race there. Good last place battle. Hate that Garrett Smithley was a part of it because it was good to see Smithley back out there. Made his first start of the season after DNQs for these first 2 races with Mike Harmon's team. Didn't really get a good shot at trying to make either of those fields, much like with Ryan Vargas. Unfortunately, Vargas did miss the show this time on the track, and so they're looking to start their season at Phoenix next week. Certainly hope they do because the 74 team had some good runs there, I believe, with Bailey Curry. If memory serves, they got a top 10 there just a couple of years ago. So if Vargas can get out there and, have a solid showing there, I think that's something that could be very eye-opening. So I'm very anxious to see what the Harmon program can do. It sounds like they got some newer equipment and we'll find out how that's going to be playing out for them. Patrick Emmerling is a last-minute substitute there over in the number 53 car for C.J. McLaughlin. McLaughlin off to a kind of a difficult start this year. Had a crash at Daytona, had a fuel pump issue at Fontana. They kept him pretty far back in the pack. And now in this one, he had a wreck in practice. They ended up getting the Motorsports Business Management entry that Mason Maggio is going to run. The 66 car missed the show, but still got to be in the race with Emmerling driving it. Still finished the race under power, even though it was 6 laps down. But, again, I think a good showing of these teams kind of helping each other out, even at the back of the field there. So kudos to them and actually getting a decent run at the end of this one. So hopefully things work out for both those programs this next week. I think there's one team that's really struggling in Xfinity so far, has to be the 07 team out of SS Greenlight. Blaine Perkins is really, although he hasn't finished last yet this year, he's already kind of positioned himself to be kind of a favorite to kind of work his way up there in the standings. Unfortunately, it's just been kind of a struggle meshing there. And I know that Gray Galding's kind of had some problems in the 08 at the same time. Of course, the last place run last week in Fontana. But that 07 team is certainly looking for a turnaround. Not sure if they're going to get it at Phoenix or not. Although it seemed Perkins had some good runs there with Our Motorsports before. I believe one of his first starts was in the Raceline car in the 23 a couple years ago. Hopefully he can find some kind of consistency like that and maybe get a top 20 finish and kind of offset some of those bad runs to start the year. But that's certainly the way to look at that too. And then finally getting to the Truck Series results here. Again, Kyle Busch, your winner over Zane Smith. Zane this time not disqualified for a lug nut issue like he had last year that dropped him to the back of the field. Instead, your last place finisher is Josh Rielm, the number 34 entry, an unsponsored Ford there for him. Fell out of the race because of a transmission that was jumping out of gear. Although it shows him with just 4 laps completed, it was about, I believe, 30 laps of the race that he was going in and out of the garage and trying to stay out there. NASCAR was warning him to maintain his minimum speed. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to, and I guess they couldn't hold the transmission in gear from any reason at the same time. So he ends up falling out and finishing last in a 35 truck field, a short field this week. Nobody got sent home after making the trip out west this time around, but finishing in the 35th spot. Brett Holmes with a crash there, finishing in 34th. End up blocking Kyle Busch's pit stall as the tow truck was trying to tow him to pit road. At the same time, Brennan Poole pulled behind the wall. G2G Racing still looks like they're struggling a bit here this year after the problems they had back at Daytona with Norm Benning. And they didn't qualify for the race, which is really disappointing after how well Benning had done in practice. They come back here for their second race of the season, and even with South Point as their sponsor, only making about 20 laps into the race before going to the garage area there. Haley Deegan and John Hunter Nemechek rounding out your bottom 5 in this particular race. Looking to drivers that had good finishes, Jake Garcia, it was mentioned in the broadcast, just celebrating his 18th birthday, which is the reason he wasn't in the 35 entry back at Daytona. Good showing for him. And then I think also one of the more emotional stories in the field, certainly Max Gutierrez after the passing of his brother in a car accident over this past off season. Good to see Max back at the track. And with his brother's picture there on his number 22, got to finish in 21st. So still, again, a solid finish out of him with AM Racing. I believe it's still only his 6th start in the series. So good start out of him, and hopefully things can work out for him coming up there as well. Looking at Dean Thompson, definitely got to give a shout out to him. Much like talking with these other drivers that are at the back of the field and then claw their way back up there, Dean Thompson could have very easily been the recipient of a last car certificate last year. We saw some very raw emotion from him back at Daytona when he was frustrated of being in this great organization with Toyota, the best opportunity he's had, and that he was still in last place at Daytona for a second consecutive year. That was certainly weighing very heavily on him. He comes back out in this race for their second race of the season, was very much a factor. Looked like he was going to get a top 10 finish out of this. Ultimately, he did finish back in the 16th spot after green flag pit stops were finished. But I think he's got something very positive to look at. Probably one of his best overall runs in his very young career, and just his second full season here in the Truck Series. Very happy to see him turn things around here. I mean, again, I know that this website at lastcar.info, we get a reputation, unfortunately, of seeming to pick on people or anything like that. That's absolutely not the indication. If you have a driver out there that runs better and that has a good showing, we're just as happy to be talking about that, because that's what we always hope for. We don't want to see somebody just get a whole ton of last place finishes. If they can kind of work, especially a young driver like that that's just trying to figure things out, I think that's something very positive that you can look at. And it's worth celebrating when it does happen, even if it's maybe, a finish that a top tier driver would just kind of, not be that interested in. It would be a disappointment for a big time driver. But for a kid that's just kind of working his way up there, I think a 16th place finish after starting 25th is definitely a positive sign going forward. Hopefully, I guess we got a couple more weeks till the Truck Series comes back at Atlanta, but hopefully they can kind of keep things going and have something positive that they can look at going forward there as well. Carson Hocevar still looking for his first win, finishes in the 7th spot there for Nice Motorsports, was in the fight there for a little bit, leading 19 laps and then falling back in the order there. Looking at other drivers throughout the field, good to see the Roper Racing effort still back in the show here with Caden Honeycutt running. I know there was the news about Corey Roper himself being suspended, but we'll see how things work out on that end. Daniel Dye had a top 20 finish there in the 19th spot. Good to see out of him. Colby Howard for Cody Rohrbaugh there as well. Tanner Gray looked very good. It was good to see him get a lot of attention in the pre-race. The number 15 truck there, looking like he was going to go for a top 5 there, ultimately back in the 13th spot there, just between Matt DiBenedetto and Stuart Friesen. But in general, I got to say, I mean, I know it wasn't maybe the most, action-packed weekend in motorsports. I think a pretty solid one in general there between the trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. I'm okay with seeing a race actually play out naturally and not have a caution like every, so often. Obviously, with the stage cautions, you're still going to get some of that. But, not going to have, the same thing where it's just a complete crash fest and it's a survival of whoever can get through it. But we'll see how things kind of work out from there. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of Cup drivers being the lower series. Kyle Busch's triple header this weekend, I think there's something redeeming, at least, that he only won one of the 3. It seemed like, he was pretty much favored to win any one of them. But it's good to see there's still some challenges out there. And I think that really speaks to the strength of the fields, especially in Xfinity, where, he just wasn't even in the same zip code as Austin Hill and Justin Allgaier getting up there to battle Chandler Smith, even though Smith, of course, is his teammate here, and Kyle running the number 10 entry. So some positive things to look at there. Chase Purdy with the top 10 for Kyle Busch Motorsports there as well, finishing in the 8th spot. I know there's a lot of speculation as to how that team's going to perform with a completely different driver lineup. Guys like Purdy, guys like Jack Wood, drivers that, really haven't kind of, really made a name for themselves yet. But it's good to see him kind of bring drivers like that in there and see if they can do more than what they've done with other teams in the very limited starts that they've had so far. Certainly, if you got Chandler Smith going over to Colleague Racing, you got John Hunter Nemechek back over with Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series. You got to fill them with somebody, and I'm glad that they found a way to kind of make that work too. But still not crazy about seeing Kyle Busch there, but hopefully we get some more starts with the 51 where you can have other guys running that entry there at the same time. And let's see here. Alrighty. But kind of an interesting situation with that. Let's see here. So we'll do I know we kind of blitzed through that here pretty quickly. Kind of browsing the chat here, see if you guys have any other questions, but I see Timmy Visions, your comment there about sounding like a broken record, but wow, Fox's coverage is so awful. I mean, I hate to admit it, I'm kind of reaching the point now where I'm tuning it out more and more. I used to wear like my my earplugs, my earphones that I use at the track, which are kind of two-way signals, so I could hear things around me as well as I can hear the radio. Nowadays, I'm pretty much just wearing these. I'm just wearing it so it kind of blocks out a lot of that, and I just hear just the scanner audio. I listen to kind of 2 different channels at once usually. It's too bad. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're trying different things. They got Danica Patrick in there, and I guess she was doing okay. I didn't notice anything really that stood out that much. I thought Clint's thing with interviewing Justin Marks during the green flag run was kind of unnecessary. Like, I know that you have, I mean, you already have pit road reporters. If you wanted to have one of them talk to to Justin Marks, I'm sure they could have done that. I just found it a little bit strange that they did that under Green, but there was some discussion about that. One other thing, kind of off topic though, that I want to kind of bring up that was kind of bothering me a little bit, is I noticed a comment on a YouTube video that was frustrated that I called the rims the rims on a car, like you have the tire that goes on the wheel, the tire. I mean, again, what is called what? In my mind, there's the rim, there's the cast iron rim that the cars have, and that the tire goes around the rim, so they bolt on together, and together that makes the wheel. Like, that's the term I always use. So, like, say if they lost a wheel, that means the whole thing came off, and like that whole thing broke free. If they lost a tire, that means the tire was flat, but the rim is still on there, or the tire wraps around the rim. I got an interesting comment that was saying that there was a frustration that I called a wheel a rim or vice versa. I guess it just comes down to a matter. I mean, I don't know what the common parlance is, but that was always my understanding, is that if the tire had come off, I would say, oh, the tire came off the rim. I wouldn't say the tire came off the wheel. I guess this last one here, I kind of mentioned a wheel here earlier, so maybe I'm tipping my hand here. But I don't know. I mean, whatever the common thing is there, I think it's, if a rim is just a part of the wheel and then the tire goes on that, I guess that would be the point of frustration. But I don't know. I don't see the point. I don't see the real big deal, but it could just be a typical YouTube kind of commenting debate. But I thought it was a little bit strange, so I don't know. I just kind of bounced it off you guys on that. So yeah. Let's see here. Regigod. Yeah, you had the same comment there about talking with the mid race. I mean, it's cool. I mean, I like that I like that Trackhouse gets attention. I mean, they certainly should. I mean, there's certainly a story. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was strange to do it mid race. And again, I kind of left this off in the whole tire rim wheel debate. But if you're gonna do that, just have the pit road report, or just have Regan Smith do it. Have anybody else that's on pit road do that, because they usually do that. They'll go up to the stand, especially under caution, like say they're trying to figure out what somebody's going to do right before the restart, and they'll pull a guy over and say, okay, well, how about this? But I mean, a lot of what Clint was talking about is stuff that you could have done during a pre-race. Like, he was talking about, like, oh, how this team is going and stuff like that. I mean, it didn't seem necessary. Now, it could be that maybe this was a consequence of how the race was going, since it did have a lot of long green flag runs and the field did get strung out. We did even see this at the back of the field about 15 laps into the race. The last 2 or 3 cars weren't even within sight of each other. They were like multiple seconds apart. So maybe they're looking to kind of fill the air with something else. And I know that's not an easy situation to be in. In my mind, my thought would be, well, let's do a through the field thing. Let's go one by one through everybody. And if we have to go through everybody, like all 36 cars, I think it's a more interesting way to fill things up. Relay information from pit road. And then maybe in the process of doing that, something happens. Somebody blows a tire. Somebody makes an unscheduled stop. I think that now maybe they were trying that, and there was a situation where a lot of teams were kind of saying the same thing, that they were fighting a tight condition and just trying to hang on to the next stage caution. That was certainly the case for Cody Ware. It sounded like it was a problem for a lot of even the mid-pack teams there as well. But I don't know. I think that's another one to kind of look at the same time. Hey, Londa, thank you for tuning in. We got a good group in here. We still got 81 people. Right on. Excellent. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what things look at. We have more than 10 cars in the Open this year, given how many winners we've had. Good question, RD Fox 76. I haven't thought of that. I mean, Wilkesboro will be interesting regardless there. But I'm not sure what the eligibility requirements are. Maybe they'll tweak that to kind of make it, weirder. I don't know if they've actually announced, like, if it's going to be the exact same system they had at over at Texas last year. But we had like 15 different winners last year, so I mean, certainly they'll be in the All-Star race. But at the very least, you're going to have 21 different chartered teams out there. My question is more like if you're going to have some open teams just trying to get an opportunity to run at Wilkesboro. I'd love to see that happen. Like maybe if these people just come out of the woodwork, kind of like 94 Brickyard style, just to have the opportunity to run at this track. I don't know if it's going to just be the All-Star race. I'm still holding out hope that we get a 400 lap race there again, because I'd love to cover that in person. But I don't know, or it just becomes permanently, at least in the near future here, just the venue for the All-Star race. I'd love to see a points paying race there. I'm kind of 50-50 on that. I know it's going to be a great show. I have no doubt. I think, even if it's a lot of green flag runs, which Wilkesboro has been known for over the years, even during the glory years of the sport, I'm not going to pretend that it's a race that's always had people running over each other and close finishes and everything. You used to have races there where somebody wins by more than a lap. The most recent time it happened was at Wilkesboro. I think it could very easily have somebody just utterly dominate the All-Star race, no matter what the format is. But I hope we get some open teams out there that at least try it. I think that would be fun, especially since we're going to get a mix of the Truck Series and the Cup Series that weekend. It's not too much longer until we find out, folks. I mean, it's going to be about 2 months from now, so that's going to be cool. So we're gonna certainly find out. Andrew Bremner, Joe Graff Jr. off to a good start. Yeah, I thought he did pretty good at Fontana. He was a little bit further off the pace at Vegas, I'd say, yesterday. Maybe not as good as he did last week. But I thought Fontana, when he was going for a top 10 there, that showed kind of the promise that I'm sure he was looking forward to when he got in an SS Greenlight car last year and missed out on making the field, had to buy Timmy Hill's ride for RSS. But we'll see what happens there. Yeah, you're from British Columbia, Andrew. Thank you for tuning in, for sure. Bob Shack. Yeah, it always sounds like Bob Shack. I got a lot of comments on that in part 1 of Field Fillers, but yeah, it's Bob Shacked. It's got got consonant soup at the end of it there, so it sounds a little bit different. But we'll get that. I had fun saying that name over and over again in the video. But that's definitely one of the things that's coming to the channel here pretty soon. I see a couple comments on the wrap. We do have a follow-up on that one, folks. I have something that'll be for our show and tell here at the same time. Let me get down here. Yeah, Phoenix is next week, so we got that. Here we go. Alrighty. Yeah, no, Yolanda's had mod for a while. I made her a mod a while back, so yeah. Let's see here. What we got here? Rule changes for less downforce to the short tracks and road courses. I think it's a good idea. I think certainly in Martinsville they felt like they had to do something. Although it seemed like even with the Gen 6 car, we were increasingly having races at Martinsville where one guy would dominate, leading like half or 2/3 of the race. Certainly with this car, I think they wanted closer competition. They wanted people to be able to bump each other out of the way. Decreasing the downforce, I think, is another thing to look at. I wish they would still look at getting the windshields out of the cars for the Bristol Dirt Race. We're so close to that now. I don't know if that's even going to happen. They're probably going to run exactly the same package they had last year. But I'm glad they're looking at different things. And I'm very excited about the road. I'm very, very excited about Sears Point. I always am. It's the home track here at LASCAR headquarters. I'm be very excited to see how exactly this plays out. But the combination of not having stage cautions and having a low downforce package and having the possibility of maybe getting some open teams out here and some road course ringers. I'd love to see if the Three Friends come out. The Three Friends team, we didn't see them at the Clash. We didn't see them at Fontana. When I was talking to them at Phoenix, they sounded interested in at least doing something in California. And now the only chance they have left, for this year at least, if it's going to be this year, is going to be Sears Point. So hopefully they make it happen. That'd be really cool. But that's going to be our next race doing the trackside coverage. I think Sears Point, we'll probably see some of this at COTA too, because of course they're not going to have the competition cautions there as well, or the stage cautions there. But I think particularly the legacy road courses at Sears Point and Watkins Glen, where they have about the same amount of laps they've always had, I think we're going to see the difference big time there. And I'm very excited to see how those races play out. I mean, we could have a race that goes caution free, which we very nearly had at Sears Point in 2012, and that was a barn burner. That was the one that Kurt Busch almost won for Phoenix Racing, and I think that was one of the best races we've had there, at least in recent years. So hopefully we see something there. So yes, I'm very excited about that. Thoughts on the Chase Elliott injury? No tires, just gas. I touched on that a little bit earlier. Obviously, yeah, certainly hope he feels better there. I hate that he got hurt earlier this year. I do think it's a good opportunity for Josh Berry. In spite of kind of the struggles that he had in the race there today, I think he's got a very good chance at maybe turning some heads if he gets some more races in that car. I don't know if it's going to stay that way. Although the Xfinity Series is going to be a companion series, at least for the next couple weeks for the Cup Series. How many weeks this is going to be, I don't know. There's been some debate about what drivers are and are not allowed to do outside the track. They're going to do what they're going to do. And I think and when I did 500 days, for example, there were a lot of situations where drivers got hurt outside the track years ago. Bill Elliott got hurt at his home. Stacey Compton got hurt playing racquetball, things like that that would happen. I mean, anybody could get hurt in any situation. Denny Hamlin keeps talking about his pickleball court that he has over at the place he's staying at, here for the next couple of races. These drivers are athletes. These drivers are, and they all have different things they like to do in their free time. I think you're just as likely to get hurt in some situations as, in extreme activities. I mean, I don't know if that was the nature of what, Chase Elliott was doing here. If this, if it was, I mean, it sounds like from the reports, he's pretty knowledgeable of snowboarding and it wasn't something he was trying for the first time. I don't know. I guess there's some limit you can kind of look at there too, to it. But I'm not sure if that's where you draw the line. If it's recreational activities, especially when these drivers, I mean, all the demands they have put on them, where there's so much they have to do for sponsors, and getting pulled this way or that, signing autographs and doing all these appearances and stuff. They got to do something to relax. And if it's, I think it's good that they don't police that too much, even at a team like Hendrick, where there is a lot of money that's at stake. Now you have to put it in the contract, I'm sure, because, if something like this does happen, I'm sure they have protocols in place. I don't know if it's, how it affects pay or whatever else. But that's always going to be a part of it. So, I think that's that's kind of my thoughts on that. So I hate it for Chase, especially being the most popular driver. And I know a lot of fans, buying tickets for the next couple races, especially Atlanta, being his home track. It sounds like, I don't know what the time frame is, but it sounds like it's going to be some time before he comes back. If he's doing physical therapy tomorrow, like the latest report indicated, but he is discharged from the hospital. We heard reports on that, so that's very good news. But yeah, I mean, it's going to take time, and he can't rush back. We can't have a situation like we've had with a lot of drivers in the sport where they've come back too soon and they injure themselves worse, and then maybe they miss the rest of the year. They certainly don't want to have that. So, it's for his fans, it's going to suck in the short term, but it is what it is. So I think that's kind of where things are at. But I certainly hope he's feeling better. I know physical therapy is no fun. I work with a lot of physical therapists in my day job. There's a lot that goes into that. But I'm sure if Kyle Busch in 2015 is any indication, and kudos to Kyle for reaching out to him about this from what we heard, I mean, he could come back even better. So, we'll see how things shake out for him there. But yeah, I think in terms of any kind of protocol on there, that would be another one to look at. Let's see here. Jay Fendi, I saw your comment there. Which races do you plan to attend this year? I touched on this a little bit, but yeah, we're just kind of doing a couple races this season. I was planning on doing 5 this year. We scaled back on that because a couple of reasons. The biggest one is that I want to make sure to get the Derek Cope book published. I've kicked that down the road too many times. So I've just I used a lot of the off season to both get 500 days done and get that book ready for print. So I think we're in a good spot with that now. The other thing is too, I want to kind of get some more content going on the channel here because I put a lot of things aside to do 500 days last year. So between that and I think we're just going down to just 3 races this year. So we did Fontana last week. Next race we're going to do is Sears Point in June. And the next one we have scheduled is going to be Phoenix in November for the championship weekend. There's an outside possibility we may do Vegas in October because I very much enjoy that track. It's a easy drive. It's not too bad over there. And certainly, you see the action from tonight. There's a lot that could happen out there as well during the racing action too. But that's kind of what we're looking at this year. And then for next season, trying to really kind of beef up the schedule a bit more. We're looking already doing maybe another road trip. So when we do the Magnets again, which we're still doing for Sears Point and Phoenix, maybe do something where we do a bit more sightseeing, get more traction off of that. We're looking at potentially either something in the Midwest, like maybe Kansas or Gateway, or fully going coast to coast and maybe doing something in the Charlotte area, either the 600, maybe Spring Darlington, maybe something out there of that nature, maybe Richmond or Martinsville, something like that. But that'll be for next season. And of course, that's still contingent on what the schedule is going to look like next year. Apparently, we're not going to have Auto Club next spring, so that opens up a time there. And that's kind of what we're looking at. So, and again, big thanks to those of you in the Patreon because you guys are absolutely instrumental in making this possible. Again, I have clarified the details on, where things go from the Patreon this year because since 2019, when I first published that, it's, both the trackside coverage and covered as many races as possible. It's now also with the videos, licensing fees, and then also a portion of that actually goes, another portion of that goes to our two staff writers that are now staff writers. They've both been promoted this past year, as well as other promotions for the Patreon itself, including the door magnets and so forth. So it helps fund a lot of different things on the channel, and hopefully that gets more people interested in it because it really is a big part of what helps keep this channel going. That, and of course, your support on this YouTube channel here as well. So big thanks to those of you. And again, if you're not able to support the Patreon, definitely just keep sharing the links to these YouTube videos and make sure you subscribe because that helps out just as much. So it really does. So I appreciate that for sure. But we got a lot more stuff coming up this year. But yeah, for trackside, to answer your question on that, Sears Point and Phoenix are the ones we're looking at. We pretty much have those locked in for this year. We just got Last Bros ticket for the Sunday race in Phoenix, and they were already telling him that they were very close to selling out. We barely got the same seat that he had 2 years ago. He was sitting on Rattlesnake Hill last year, so that was kind of his situation before. So that's kind of what we're looking at this season. But I think it's going to be very exciting. So we'll have some good coverage for you guys. Certainly doing the certificates again at Phoenix. I have a bag now that I can keep those in, so hopefully I don't lose one like I did last year with BJ McLeod. So we'll figure things out there and kind of go from there. But that's another one we're looking at. But yeah, a lot of things coming up here in short order. We'll do some trivia here in the meantime. And I do have something for show and tell, but I'll do that while you guys pick which category you'd like here in the meantime. Yes, Three Friends was the number 30 team. I saw a question on that. That was there as well. Let's see here. Alrighty. Let's see. Okay. So we'll do some, I'm sorry, I was just looking at a couple of their comments here on this. We'll do some trivia questions here for the latter part of this show. And we'll do show and tell here in just a moment. So again, the categories once again are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories. Once again, they are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories here on the old Trivial Pursuit deal. Now, I saw a lot of comments here in the chat asking about the wrap from last week. For those of you who were not in last Tuesday's show after we got back from Fontana, I did obtain some of the wrap off of BJ McLeod's number 78 car when they were peeling the wrap off of it. They were just throwing it away. So I had my backpack with me, and I stuffed it with as much of it as I could fit. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised. During our show last week, I kind of peeled some of it off the ball there and tried to figure out what exactly we had. So for our show and tell tonight, I do have a follow-up for that. So definitely stay tuned here. I'm just going to show it here just now. Let me see if I can get the camera. I may have to pull this back a little bit. trying a little different arrangement on our camera setup here, folks. I usually have the switchboard to my left. I moved it to the right here and moved the microphone a little closer. So if you apologize for the feedback here a little bit. All right, let me see if I can get this in the shot. Take a look at this, folks. I don't know, does that show well? Oh, there we go. So here is the entire driver's door off the 78 car, and we got it on some poster board, and I was able to kind of stretch that out, and it came off. Whoop, there we go. Yeah, you can see the name. See, I got the name sticker right on top. You got the Lion decal here on the side, and it came out pretty well. I know it's still got some wrinkles in it, but I actually kind of liked it. It's got a little character to it. But it came out real nice. So this bad boy is staying here at Last Car headquarters for sure. So we got that on here, and yeah, this I wasn't sure if it was going to fit on this board. I kind of had to squeeze the Tiger logo on there, but this came out pretty nice. It came out pretty nice here. So let me kind of twirl this around here. I'll bring the camera over. You can kind of see it a little bit closer. Let's kind of do this. We need to get like a mobile cam here. Let's bring this out. There you go. So you can kind of see this a little better. Let's bring that. Get the light there. There you go. So there's the so we got the door number. It almost matches on the side. I think there was a little tear on the 7 there where it didn't quite line up. It's pretty close. I know from it being bunched up, that's probably the one reason it doesn't quite line up there, but it's pretty close. The tear mark there is like right. It's pretty close. I mean, it looks like it actually does line up. And I moved this back and forth to try to fit it on there, and it didn't quite there. But I think that probably is a perfect match on the 7 because it looked like I saw them. That's where I saw them kind of grip the decal off. They kind of grabbed that bottom part and pulled off that corner, but it kind of resulted in that. So pretty neat. I love how it came out. I'm very pleased. I was thinking about buying like a piece of plastic to put this on so I can kind of peel it off and again, but I don't really want to do that. I want to just kind of have it on something and just keep it there. But it came out real nice. I mean, it's got like pretty much all the number except that one corner of it there on the 7. But really came out good. I mean, you can actually, if you pull the camera closer, you can see kind of where there's a bit of track grime on it, kind of in the middle of the 8 there. There's a little bit of, they got some flecks of rubber and so forth from the track there. I mean, it just came out great. I mean, and it was dumb luck that we got both pieces of this. I really didn't think it would come out this well, but it really came out nice. So we got that here. We got the BJ McLeod name at the top of it there from the, I believe from the driver's door, part of the Lion logo. And then also this decal here I found this in the wrap. I guess it's like the identifiers for the deal there as well. So that showed up at the same time. This is not the only piece of it though, however. So I did untangle the wrap, and I'm going to bring the camera back over here. I think this will still work. All right, so we got that. Okay, there's that behind us. So I also showed, when I was able to pull it apart and try to match everything up, we did also have the lower part of the roof numbers, and I put this on some glossy paper here, and I saw, it was interesting, the team actually posted a video of them pulling the wrap off the car. So that one actually really came off pretty well. But this must be where the name tag came off too, because it's pretty close to the rail on the edge of this. But this one came off in just 2 pieces. I think this part on the left must have been right near the roof flaps, although it's a pretty straight line, so maybe it might have been below that. But it gives you an idea of just how big the roof number is on these cars. I figured they'd be kind of smaller considering they put sponsors on the roof these days, which I'm still not crazy about. But yeah, this one came out pretty nice. So you got this one here, which I think is easily the second best part of it that came out of that stack. And then the other part, and this one's not as flattened because the text was on a extra layer. It was very hard to flatten it out even this much. But here is the American Hartford Gold logo that was on the lower part of the panel there. This one is it's still very much rumbled up, as you can see. But that's about as far as I could get it. And plus, I want to make sure it still fit on this piece of paper here as well. So this one came off it there too. A lot of the letters you can kind of see a little bit on here are kind of on a separate layer. They're curled over pretty good. It's not printed on the black. It's kind of an extra layer of these letters, the lettering itself on the black wrap. So when they pulled it off, it kind of jumbled it up pretty good. But it's got a lot of character to it. It's certainly a conversation piece. And you can still kind of recognize the sponsor logo on it there. So that came out pretty good. So yeah, so we got these three pieces here. My thinking is this. Now, I have these, and I also have a whole bag of extra little odds and ends of just the black wrap on that. And I got some plans for these coming up here. I'm thinking of selling these other two here, the one with the roof number and the one with the America Hartford Gold, because I think I could be able to roll those up into a tube. My biggest concern on that was being able to like transport those there, because I don't need all three of these here. I mean, all three of them are really cool, and I would absolutely put all three of them here somewhere if I could put it. But that's kind of my thinking. So I'd like to share this as well, so it could be in other people's collections too. So I'll have more updates on this in probably the next couple weeks. It's not going to be right now, but because there's another thing I have planned with the extra little odds and ends, the extra little black pieces. Like I have a little extra, I got an extra piece on the counter over there too. I got an idea of something to do with those too. And I want to wait until that comes in. So more than likely, I'm going to put those up, the roof piece and that one up for auction. This one's going to stay over here at Last Car headquarters there. So we'll have some more information on that pretty soon. I'll put some information in the Patreon as well on that to kind of give an update. Yeah, I think that was really cool. So I was very pleased with what came out of that ball of the vinyl there. I did heat it up a little bit to kind of try to spread it out. What helped was the paper itself as well, because I could stick it on there and then kind of pull it against that, and it seemed to respond to that really well, which is good, and it saved it really nicely. So yeah, so we got a lot of the wrap here from the car that ran on the Auto Club Speedway for the last time. Next to last race, of course, they had the Xfinity race afterwards. Had that same deal there too. So yeah, so we had, yeah, it was crazy. I was going to do the magnet giveaway that night, after the live stream, but I basically spent the rest of the evening pulling these out, and I had them all laid on the floor. And then the next day at work, afterwards, I went over to Staples, got some poster board. This is on foam board here. And then these are on kind of a glossy, like kind of like a schoolhouse, like marker board kind of material, but it's thin and it's flexible. And I think those would roll into a tube. So I could do that. So, I'll have more information on that. If you're interested in, again, those two pieces, the American Hartford Gold and the lower part of the roof number, I'm looking to put those on eBay, at some point there. And yeah, and then leaving this piece of, the 78 car here at Last Car headquarters. We'll get it somewhere in the background here. We'll figure something out on that. But this is definitely, yeah, again, just dumb luck that we turned out with these pieces. Could have easily just had a fraction of something that wasn't recognizable. But luckily I was right there when they were peeling it off. And I literally went directly from the guy's hands that were peeling it off to me. So I can definitely authenticate that these were off the 78 car from that. And yeah, so we'll keep some information out for you guys on that there very soon. Maybe I'll do a standalone video here on the YouTube channel to kind of cue people in, but we'll talk about that at the same time. But yeah, definitely got. You're right. Definitely got to tweet the team when I made pictures out of it too. But we'll do that in short order there at the same time. So yeah, so that'll be pretty cool. Alrighty, so yeah, we got a wild card for the trivia section there. Looks like we'll have that. Hope you guys enjoyed that too. A little something special for our show and tell segment tonight. And yeah, I do have one other idea of something to do with some of this here, and I want to do that before we set up auctions on this. So it's not going to be this. It's not going to be this week. It'll probably be another week or so here. But again, you guys will certainly get notice of that when we get up to that point there. So. Yeah, no, thank you. I'm glad you guys like it there. I was agonizing about how to preserve this, and I'm so glad it fit on this board. I was thinking I was going to have to tape two of these together, but it fit pretty well. I think it did scrunch the 7 a little bit, but I'm okay with that. I think that's pretty much where that's going to stay. So I think that'll be pretty good. But yeah, let's see here. So we'll do some wild card questions here to wrap up tonight. I got my Ty Gibbs shirt on today. He didn't quite have the great run out there. I figured he'd have a good showing after qualifying fourth, but didn't quite, I guess, had one problem after another with the flat tire, pit road penalties, and so forth. I'm still excited about the kid. I think he's going to be doing very well. I think I'm happy to fly the colors here for him. Plus, it's good to have another green shirt on hand before St. Patrick's Day, so I guess there's that. But I picked this up over at Fontana. I'm glad it survived the weather on the way back, because it rained cats and dogs right after I picked it up. But we'll see how the 54 does this year. Just happy to see another number get into the Cup Series here at the same time, too, even though Rick Ware ran it a few years ago. So we'll do some wildcard questions here to wrap up the show here for this evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Our first question tonight: who is the only current, now late 90s, the only current NASCAR Winston Cup driver to have won an IndyCar race? Okay, so get back in the time machine, think back to the late 90s, and say, who's the only current NASCAR Winston Cup driver to have won an IndyCar race? So kind of a two-parter. Kind of think of a 1999, 98 driver lineup. And which one of those is an active driver back then to have won an IndyCar race? Kind of fitting with the IndyCar series starting back up today, so we got that. Alrighty. Who is the only current NASCAR Winston Cup driver to have won an IndyCar race? That is the question. Who is the only current NASCAR Winston Cup driver to have won an IndyCar race? All right, we got guesses for Tony Stewart, Robbie Gordon, John Andretti, Sterling Moss, Taylor Swift, Pato O'Ward. All righty. Here we go. The only current NASCAR Winston Cup driver to have won an IndyCar race, the answer is indeed John Andretti. John Andretti. Late great John Andretti is the correct answer. Charles Peterson Jr., you were the first one. Oh, no tires, just gas. And Bowser Jr. XD, you were just ahead there. So right on top of it. A lot of good guesses, but I guess it wasn't going 1999. It must have been 98. But yes, those of you guessing Tony Stewart, certainly in 99, it would have qualified there as well. Here we go. This is a relation to a past video on the channel. What outfit did Neil Castles join in the 50s to help further his career? What outfit did Neil Castles join in the 50s to help further his career? Yeah, think about that one. What outfit did Neil Castles join in the 50s to help further his career? I like how that looks back there with the number. That's pretty cool. Right on. Beast of Metal, thank you. I'm glad that comes off there. Yeah, I do need to tweet the team. I haven't done that yet. I did tweet a couple of things on the 78 car at the time. I think I tweeted the ball of the wrap afterwards that I had on the show last week, but I don't think I've actually tweeted the layout here. So I do need to do that, but I'll get that together. Let me read this again here. What outfit did Neil Castles join in the 50s to help further his career? I guess Poodle Skirts from Mankey. Wow, you guys are all over the place. Northeast Soap Association. I like that. Carl Kiekhofer, Driving Suit Screen Actors Guild, Edmonton Oilers, Holman Moody, Napa, Arizona Coyotes. All right, here we go. What outfit did Neil Castles join in the 50s to help further his career? The answer is the Screen Actors Guild. Screen Actors Guild. Charles Peterson, you got it. Indeed, he was a stuntman, recall. He was a stuntman, worked on a number of different films. What was it? I almost said Stroker Ace, but it wasn't that one. It was the Kenny Rogers one. Six Pack. He worked on that one. So there you go. Yeah, outfit is kind of, yeah, it's a weird way they phrase it. It must have had to use a different word for the character limit on this thing. Alrighty, next question. What Keokuk, Iowa driver once toiled as a bean farmer? Let me read that one again. What Keokuk, Iowa driver once toiled as a bean farmer? So Keokuk. Is it Keokuk? Or is it Keokuk? Keokuk, Iowa driver once toiled as a bean farmer. That is our next question. Don't tell me it's a birthday suit. Yeah, not quite. Yeah, there's a lot of details in the Neil Castles one. That turned out to be a very rich topic. That was one. I had a lot of the Buddy Arrington material together because I was going to do a video on him already when sadly he passed last summer, but I didn't have anything on Neil Castles, so I had to basically kind of work on that one from the ground up. I'm so glad it came out the same month as the Arrington one because I was really meaning to kind of get those done. And I've got some other videos here in the meantime. I mean, certainly the Trevor Boys one is another one on a driver that I think needs a fitting tribute, and the Bob Schacht one's going to come up here about the same time. But I need to finish writing the Boys one. That one I got a ton of material. I'm chomping at the bit to start going through it because I got so much stuff to work with there. But I think it's going to make a good video once it's done. What Keokuk, Iowa driver once toiled as a bean farmer? We got guesses for Steve Rogers, Krusty the Clown, Fireball Roberts, Neil Castles, Dick Hutchison, Esteban Ocon, Johnny Beauchamp. Lake Speed is Mississippi. There aren't that many Iowan drivers. Yes, that's very true. Dick Trickle. Made a whole video. Yeah, I know. It takes a while. Here we go. What Keokuk, Iowa driver once toiled as a bean farmer? The answer is Ramo Stott. Ramo Stott, I believe the 76 500 pole sitter. Ramo Stott. Alrighty. Yeah, that's a tricky one. That was not going to be my guess either. Ooh, here we go. Wild card is popping off tonight, man. We got some good ones on here. Okay, here we go. Next question. Who once said you ought to get 10 bonus points for taking Earnhardt out? Who once said you ought to get 10 bonus points for taking Earnhardt out? Is the next question. Ramo Stott was the answer to the previous question. Yeah, that's a new one on me too. So there you go. Right. Who once said you ought to get 10 bonus points for taking Earnhardt out? That is the next question. I guess we haven't done a Ramo Stott video. Maybe that'll be something in the works too. Who knows? But I think this will be a good year to kind of get stuff going on there. I'd love to get the Cope book out and just kind of get that going. So yeah, we were looking at 5 races this year, but yeah, we're doing 3, and I think that'll still be good. They're spaced out enough that I think in between we can get a lot of stuff done here. So that's kind of where I've had to kind of be creative with budgeting my time this year. After 500 days took so much time last year, but you can see why it did. It ended up being 8 hours of that. So yeah, and we got more parts of that coming up too. So ideally, I'd like to at least get the pot stirred on all the series I have on the channel sometime this year, if not the first half of this year. But I don't have firm release dates at the moment here. But we'll get there. We'll get there. This is the time to try. Who once said you ought to get 10 bonus points for taking out Earnhardt? For taking Earnhardt out is the quote. I guess it's for Terry Labonte, Elmo Langley, Rusty Wallace, Tom Cruise, Kyle Petty, half the field in NASCAR. Yeah, 611 Hornet, you got it. Sterling Marlin, Rusty Wallace. All right, here we go. Who once said you ought to get 10 bonus points for taking Earnhardt out? The answer is Darrell Waltrip, DW. DW. Willie Bowen, looks like you got it. Anybody get it before you? Maserati 9, you got it. Joey Fairbanks, you got it earlier. There you go. Darrell, old DW. That was a DW quote. That almost sounded like it would be a... I was thinking Jeff Bodine. And I'm sure it was referencing the 89 Wilkesboro race where Bodine won the race after Rudd took Earnhardt out. I figured it wouldn't be Rudd. It was probably said to Rudd. Here we go. Here's a good question here too. What driver answered trivia questions in his race car for a 1997 ESPN commercial? Got a commercial question here, folks. What driver answered trivia questions in his race car for a 1997 ESPN commercial? You have no issues in tech? I didn't see. I can take a glance at that too. Correct. Yes, 2 minutes ago, Bob Pockris tweets, tech complete, no issues. Byron is the winner. So congratulations to William Byron. And Joey Logano will be your feature of a third Last Car feature tonight. Joey Logano, the first feature of a Last Car article on my site. He finished last in both the Clash and the 500. So a little bit different than the Bob Schacht sweep of the duels in the 500. So yes, indeed. What driver answered trivia questions in his race car for a 1997 ESPN commercial? I want to see if this while we have this, I want to see if this screen works for my thing. I was trying another layer here. Okay, there's that. Oh, good. Okay, cool. It does work. Oh, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. And I can see it on both screens. Okay. So there you go. So we can pull it up here. You can see the tweet. There it is. Are you sure this isn't that Jurassic Park 1997 car, is it? There you go. Oh, can I pull this down? It stays there? All right, right on. Okay. I was playing around with this after the last time we did the full screen. And yes, it isn't in dark mode. I do apologize, but we'll have that on here. So we got that. And then I think we can switch back to the stream mode. Okay, that's nice. I'm going to have to get used to that. We need to get some transitions on the screen here. Okay, it's just black in the background, but that's okay. I don't mind that. Can we switch to the race results? Okay. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun with this here. Okay. Back to the stream one. There we go. Cool. Reading the answer again. I haven't given the answer yet. What driver answered trivia questions in his race car for a 1997 ESPN commercial? All right, we get answers for Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt, Kyle Petty, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Sr., Gordon. Okay, here we go. The answer is Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon is the correct answer. Who was the first one on that? Bowser Jr. XD, I believe you were the first one on that one. That's what it looks like. There you go. What camera software am I using? I'm just using Streamlabs on this one. And I'm using a Rode Class A servo-based device here on this, including a Rode. I believe this is the podcast mic. This is the same one they use on... I know they use it on Door Bumper Clear, and I think they use it on Denny's podcast. That's pretty good. It's not the best setup, but it's definitely the best I've used. So I've seen other people, and I don't have this thing right up to my face, which is good with this one because it seems like it picks up audio pretty well. Further down the line, we find a different setup here at Last Car headquarters. We'll do something. We'll do the articulated arm and stuff. I don't do that because I don't really have a setup for that here, even a temporary one. This desk here is pretty thin. I don't think it would support the weight of that. And I don't want to break this as these tables are so handy. So there you go. We'll do one more question here for tonight, folks, and we'll do that. Here's a throwback for sure. Who is the editor of NASCAR Winston Cup Scene? Who is the editor of NASCAR Winston Cup Scene? That is the question. Who is the editor of NASCAR Winston Cup Scene? Sound is good. Okay, thank you. I always re-listen to these. So I want to make sure it's not too bad. I'm trying this different with this over here. I think I might stick with that because this is actually a little bit easier to set up. It's a little hard to walk around, but I got the mic in the table with the mixer here, and then the computer over here. So, but I think I usually look to my left anyway, so I think this kind of works out. So I'm kind of looking at the mic like a person, but I'm kind of looking to my left here, kind of at the screen. We'll see if that works out. Who is the editor of NASCAR Winston Cup Scene? And the answer, a lot of you got it, and he is indeed on this device, and that would be Steve Wade. Correct. Steve Wade, co-host of the Scene Vault podcast. So yes, he did make the device here. So there you go. I actually take a picture of that too. That's pretty cool. You have to tweet this over for that. Boom. Alrighty. So we'll have that there for now. So that will do it for the show this evening. So congratulations to William Byron for pulling off the victory in utterly dominant fashion there at Las Vegas, even with the last minute bit of reversal of fortune there off of pit road. Congratulations to him. Joey Logano will be your feature of a LastCar article later tonight. The website, of course, is lastcar.info. The Patreon is patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, and my Twitter feed is @LastCarOnBrock, where you can get trackside or like updates to the moment there of last place battles during the races, as well as incidental stuff during the week, entry list updates and everything else coming up during the week here. Our next show is going to be next Sunday after the Cup Series race at Phoenix. We'll talk about the Xfinity race as well as the Cup Series race. We'll see if anybody else pulls out a lead in the LastCar standings or something else changes there in the desert. That will be the site of our coverage later this year in November, but we'll do things from there. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Stay tuned for more information on the BJ McLeod pieces. We're going to have some more news on that in the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, have a great week. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.